So let's talk about the subdivisions of the thorax. So here you can see in this video, we have three main subdivisions of the thorax. The pleural cavity on each side and the mediastinum. And this mediastinum is further divided into 4 other subdivisions. So this is a picture of the mediastinum. First we have the superior mediastinum up to here. And this entire part is the inferior mediastinum, which is further subdivided into 3 more divisions. We have the anterior mediastinum, and we have the middle mediastinum, and we have the posterior mediastinum. Okay, so now let's talk about the contents of the thoracic cavity. So it's very easy to see that each of the pleural cavities, they contain the pleura and the lungs on each side. And the mediastinum, however, it contains a lot more contents. So we'll have the trachea that bifurcates over here. And we will also have the esophagus that moves behind the trachea. And of course, we have the heart and the pericardium. And the heart also contains the aorta, the pulmonary arteries, the superior vena cava, and the pulmonary veins, the inferior vena cava, all of those. So we'll write great vessels. And what we can see here, superficial to the cardiac plexus, is the thymus gland. We also have the sympathetic trunks, which you can't really see in this image, but it's along the posterior aspect of the thoracic cavity, just anterior to the attachment of the ribs to the thoracic vertebrae in this line down here on each side. So the sympathetic trunks. The thoracic duct, the mediastinal lymph nodes. Okay, there may be some more structures, so we'll talk about all of them in detail. So let's move on to the superior aperture of the thorax. So the superior aperture is also known as the thoracic inlet. So we're talking about this over here. So the superior narrow end of the thorax is continuous with the neck. It is shaped like a kidney. So as you can see, kidney shaped. Okay. Now the important thing to notice is the upper border of the sternum lies at the level of the T3 vertebra. So you can see here. So this is T1, this is T2, and this is T3. Some of the contents pass from the neck into the thorax through this superior aperture. And we will be discussing this in more detail in a future video. Now we have the inferior aperture of the thorax. So the inferior aperture is the more broader end of the thorax. And naturally, the opening is much larger. It also serves as the superior margin of the abdominal cavity. So all of this over here. So it's shaped like a heart, basically. and upside down heart. The thorax and abdomen are divided by the diaphragm. Some of the contents pass from the thoracic cavity into the abdominal cavity through here. So there's these small openings in the diaphragm, and we'll be discussing that in more detail in the future video about the apertures of the thorax. So we discussed that there is a superior aperture and an inferior aperture. So we mentioned that some of the contents, they enter from the neck into the thorax, and some of the contents pass from the thorax into the abdomen. And we'll be discussing more about them later on. So that's it for the subdivisions of the thorax.